Refugees from Ukraine are spreading out across Europe. Hundreds reached Munich aboard a train from Budapest on Friday. Most were women with children. Many others were elderly. Germany has received nearly 200,000 refugees so far.
They are being received and served food and drink. If they are being taken to an accommodation, they are of course tested for COVID. Given the problematic situation with the rapidly rising infection numbers in Germany, so they are being accommodated at emergency shelters where they can stay for now.
So, as you can see from this map, the exodus from Ukraine is taking place in nearly all directions, and Poland has seen more people cross into its territory than any other country. CNN's Ed Lavandera is there in Poland for us near the border with Ukraine.
It's been just over 3 weeks since Russia invaded Ukraine, and there are now more than 3.2 million people, refugees who have left their home country of Ukraine into mostly Europe. And we have new figures that show that more than 2 million of those refugees have entered the country of Poland. Staggering numbers that we continue to see unfolding here in Poland. And one of the things that has really struck us in the last few days, as we've spoken with so many of the refugees arriving here in the borders area of Poland and Ukraine, is that they're coming from the far eastern areas of Ukraine, cities that are seeing the worst of the warfare. And the refugees described to us a painful experience. In fact, we spoke with one family, 2 women who had come with their a 6-year-old girl. They said they spent 2 days traveling from the city of Kharkiv to get to this border town in Poland. They said they told the young girl, they didn't describe to her that it was a war going on. They didn't want to tell her that. They said they were going to take a trip to Poland, just like some of her other friends had been doing. And that is the kind of efforts that parents have to do to shield their young children from the horrors of this war. And what they described to us, they had hoped that they could wait out the war and the fighting to be able to stay in their home city. But after weeks and weeks of constant warfare, they couldn't take it any longer.
We hoped that everything would work out. We didn't want to leave our home, but we couldn't wait anymore. 4 rockets, right? 4 rockets hit our area. Every day, every minute, every second. It's just terrible for everyone, for ourselves, for our children, for our families and loved ones. We still have relatives back home. Our grandmother, who is 100 years old, was too feeble to be physically removed.
So here in the train station where so many refugees have been arriving in the last few weeks on the border of Poland, we continue to hear these stories. And what is really striking about this situation is that they're coming from those hardest hit areas where the warfare and the decimation of cities has been the most extreme. And these are really treacherous journeys that is taking many of these families longer and longer to get out of. In very dangerous situations, and those are the kind of accounts that we continue to hear over and over from the refugees that are arriving here in Poland. Ed Lavandera, CNN, Przemysl, Poland.
Ukrainians and Russians fleeing the war are having a hard time entering the U.S. CNN's Lucy Kavanaugh talks to some asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border who've been there for days.
At America's southern border, anguish and uncertainty for the war-weary. Christina was in Kyiv when Russia unleashed terror from the skies.
I just wake up from bomb.
She fled, first to Poland, then France, then Mexico, unable to bring her parents or brother along.
I just crying so much, just hugging so much and tell goodbye, and we don't know, maybe they don't look each other anymore in this life.
Traumatized, shaken, waiting for a chance to apply for asylum in the U.S.
2 weeks at the border, and you have not been able to cross, despite the fact that you're fleeing war.
And here we are third time
at the border.
And we just try to go there.
Sergei Finik, his wife Yana, and their 2 little ones fled Kharkiv as soon as the invasion began, before the Russians turned their home to rubble.
They said they're really hoping to be able to cross. He says he wants to go to America.
An unreachable dream for many, with the U.S. southern border largely closed off to asylum seekers for the past 2 years thanks to a controversial Trump-era COVID health order known as Title 42. Shortly after we spoke, Christina and other Ukrainians were allowed to cross. But they weren't the only ones seeking refuge from Vladimir Putin's wrath.
There is confusion at the border here in Tijuana. We saw some Ukrainians allowed to enter, including those that have been turned away several times. This group consists of mostly Russians. They have been here for days. Their fate remains uncertain.
Katya Yarina and her 2 children came from St. Petersburg. Her husband was arrested for protesting the invasion hours after it was announced. He feared prison or forced conscription into the war.
She caught the last Aeroflot flight to Mexico, hoping to gain refuge and safe haven in the U.S. И вы приехали сюда, и вы попробовали пройти, you tried to cross. Что вам сказали? What did they tell you?
Нам сказали...
She says they were promised entry, then told to wait. 6 days later, they remain in limbo, no access to funds because of sanctions. A Department of Homeland Security memo obtained by CNN instructs Customs and Border Protection officers to consider exempting Ukrainians from Title 42. An agency spokesman said other vulnerable individuals could be accepted on a case-by-case basis, but no other nationality was singled out in the new guidance.
And if you'd like to help people in Ukraine who may need shelter, food, and water, please go to cnn.com/impact and you'll find several ways you can help. All right, coming up, mounting losses and trails of destruction. We'll have the latest on the war in Ukraine as Russia's invasion enters its 4th week. Stay with me.